Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we're taking a look at Strikeforce Rockhold versus Kennedy, which is coming to you on Saturday, July 14th at 10 p.m. from Portland, Oregon, the Rose Garden Arena. This is a fantastic-looking card. The main event, Luke Rockhold defending his middleweight title against Tim Kennedy. Co-main event, Nate Marquardt will battle Tyron Woodley in a 5-round affair to crown a new Strikeforce welterweight champion. Lots of other fantastic fights. I'm going to predict every single fight on the card, so definitely it should be a good night of fights. And of course, we already have our UFC on Fuel TV fights on Wednesday night, whether it's you're listening to it before or after that event. So that one hopefully was a good night either way. I'm looking forward to it. A couple shows in 1 week, nothing wrong with that. The Strikeforce bet pack is available for $10. If you bought the UFC on Fuel bet pack for $10, you're also getting the Strikeforce one for $10, so it's 2 for 1. Even if you missed the UFC on Fuel one, just buy that same bet pack, you'll get the Strikeforce one. And as I said before, between UFC on Fuel and Strikeforce, if I do not have a good week of predicting and have a good pair of records, I'm going to email and send out everybody that buys this pack, the UFC 149 bet pack, absolutely free. So basically, when it comes right down to it, $10, you're getting not one, not two, but 3 bet packs. If you don't get green this week, get some solid money in your bank account. Thank you very much to all my sponsors. All of their links are available over at kamikazeoverdrive.net. For UFC on Fuel going back, it was supposed to be Joe versus Joel, the predictions. Only Joe Caporelli's doing predictions this week. Joel Riche is having a busy week. So head over to the website to get my UFC on Fuel predictions, both myself and Joe Caporelli's. And I think it's time to get into my first prediction. We're going to kick things off in the Strikeforce welterweight division as 15-3-0 Jason, the Kansas City Bandit High, battles 8-2 Nate Moore in a very good matchup. Quickly taking a look at what they've been doing recently. High has won 6 consecutive fights, including back-to-back Strikeforce wins over Quinn Mulhern and Todd Moore, while Nate Moore has on his own one-fight winning streak. He defeated Nathan Coy by knockout back at Strikeforce Diaz vs. Cyborg. Prior to that, he was stopped by Tarek Safadine by KO, also fighting for Strikeforce. First thing that stands out to me, the inactivity, if you will, of both fighters, with Moore not fighting since January 29th, 2011. And High, September 23rd, 2011. So Jason High has been a little more active. Both guys come to this fight. They're both grappling-based fighters. Nate Moore fighting out of AKA. He's an former NCAA wrestler. Jason High, also the wrestling background. But he is a BJJ purple belt. We just saw him win at one of the major jiu-jitsu grappling tournaments, certainly keeping himself active in that sense. And looking at his fight with both Todd Moore as a BJJ black belt and Quinn Mulhern, a very talented grappler, Jason High used his striking and grappling effectively, winning the striking exchanges, getting takedowns, controlling his opponent in the scenarios he needed to, and I think that's what's going to decide this fight. Nate Moore's last battle with Nathan Coy, who's also a grappler. Nathan Coy won the opening round, keeping Moore on his back and beating him up for the duration of that round before Moore came back and knocked Coy out in the second round. But I really was impressed with what Coy did to Moore, and I thought that was definitely an issue for Nate Moore. And I think we're going to see more of the same in this fight. So my prediction here is I'm going to take Jason High to defeat Nate Moore by decision. I think High's grappling and striking will simply be better, and I think he grinds out a long decision victory. So Jason High to defeat Nate Moore in the opening fight of the night. Our second prediction of the evening, still on the preliminary cards, takes place in the Strikeforce lightweight division as 4-1-0 Ryan Couture battles 10-2-0 Joe the Hybrid Duarte. Taking a look at Couture, Couture is coming off a pretty significant win back at Strikeforce Tate versus Rousey, where he stopped Connor Hune in the third round via TKO. Prior to that, he had a decision win over Maka Watson. All 5 of his career fights have taken place in Strikeforce, so he's very familiar with the promotion. Joe Duarte, not quite as active. Last fighting August 12th, 2011. He has won 5 fights in a row. He's coming off a decision victory over George Gurgel. He also is a former Bellator fighter. And Duarte, a very well-rounded athlete. 2 wins by knockout, 6 by decision. 6 by submission, 6 by decision. I'm impressed with what he had against Gurgel. He had some moments of inactivity in the striking, but he's fairly technical and solid. And he had some very good takedowns. Was able to stay on top of Gurgel and control him in that fight. Ryan Couture, he surprised a lot of people against Connor Hune. Early on, Connor Hune got the better of him with taking him down, but Couture showed some excellent striking. Obviously, he's been working with his dad because he used some of that dirty boxing along the wall. And this is kind of a tough fight because Couture is still relatively green with only 5 fights under his belt. And he's taking another. This is a good progression from Connor Hune up to Joe Duarte. But I go back to that Matt Ricehouse fight against Couture with Matt Ricehouse defeating. He just did everything a little bit better than Couture, and it wasn't a great fight for Ryan. And I think we're going to see something here. I think Duarte has the wrestling and the grappling ability to take Couture down and keep him like he did to Gurgel and like Connor Hune did to Couture early. And Duarte has the striking ability to match on the feet with Couture. That's where Hune kind of struggled. He's more of a brawler, and Couture is able to use his technical style to outdo Hune there. Either way, I think Duarte just gets the better of Ryan Couture. It'll be a competitive fight, and I'm going to go with Joe Duarte to defeat Ryan Couture again in this fight by decision. We now move back to the Strikeforce welterweight division, and what is going to be a very, very good fight. And this is one of those fights that if you aren't sure about if you're going to watch the prelims or not, I would suggest tuning in for this matchup as Jordan Young Gun Meehan, 23-8-0, battles Tyler the Evolution Stinson, 21-8-0. Both fighters are coming off losses. Jordan Meehan was defeated by split decision back at Strikeforce Rockhold versus Jardine by Tyron Woodley, the man who was fighting for the title. Prior to that, he had ripped off 6 straight wins, and in that winning streak, he defeated veteran fighters Joe Riggs, Josh Berkman, Marius Aronskis, and his Strikeforce debut TKO victory over Evangelista Santos, which was very impressive. Tyler Stinson, on the other hand, no slouch either, but he's coming off a split decision loss against Tarek Safdien, another one of these top-ranked welterweights that the Strikeforce division boasts. Before that, he had 4 straight wins, including his 15-second knockout of Eduardo Pamplona back at Strikeforce M1 Global Fader versus Henderson in July 2011. The way I look at this matchup, first and foremost, physically, the way these two guys square off, Meehan's a pretty big welterweight at 5'11", but Stinson comes in a ridiculous 6'3". He's a giant at the 170-pound weight division, and that's certainly an advantage. Stinson has significant power on the feet, and that's something that Meehan's going to have to be careful of in his career. 15 of his 21 victories have come by knockout, which is very impressive, and he's a dangerous striker, not to say the least. He has 6 wins by submission, but a big number that stands out for me with Stinson is of his 8 career losses, 5 of them have come by submission, and we saw against Tarek Safdien when Stinson was having success with his feet against a pretty good striker in Safdien. Tarek switched gears, shot the takedown, put Stinson on his back, and kept him there for large portions of the fight, and Stinson did not have a lot to offer him off his back. Now, the way I look at it, Meehan's a very well-coached fighter. He should have an excellent game plan. I'm not saying Stinson won't either, but look for Meehan. If he stands with Stinson and has success, he'll probably keep it there. If not, Jordan's going to look to take him down. Jordan has 13 knockout wins of his own in his career, but he also has 7 wins by submission, and he's done a good job working on his ground game. He's a young fighter. He's still improving, and I really expect to see Meehan use his ground game in this fight. He's the type of guy who will, he's active against Tyron Woodley. He just didn't do enough off his back against the wrestler, and that's why he lost that fight. But I think he'll turn the tables here, and I think he'll actually be able to get an advantageous position and could very well put Stinson away via submission. So my prediction for this matchup is Jordan Meehan to defeat Tyler Stinson by submission. Returning to the 155-pound division, we have another very good matchup. This could easily be on the main card. I think it should be. Former title challenger Jorge Gamebred Masvidal, 22-7-0, battles Justin the Silverback Wilcox, 11-4-0 with 1 no contest. Excellent fight. Let's look at Masvidal first. He's coming off that decision loss against Gilbert Melendez when he fought for the title. Wasn't a great performance. He definitely I think he had some issues with his hand. Either way, he's still a talented fighter, and don't judge him based on that one fight. Prior to that, he had back-to-back wins over Billy Evangelista and KJ Noons. And in the fight before, he had taken a welterweight fight before he won those two, losing a controversial decision against the heavy-handed Paul Daly. So this kid has some definite big fight experience and a lot, 29 fights overall. A lot can be said about Jorge Masvidal, well-rounded. 10 wins by knockout, and he's got a pretty good grappling game, even though he has 1 submission to his credit. Justin Wilcox, on the other hand, he's coming off a knockout loss against Carlos Forder, 13 seconds back at Strikeforce Melendez versus Masvidal, same card. On the prelims, he was knocked out. Prior to that, he was looking very good against JZ Cavalcante before an eye poke ended that fight and resulted in a no contest. Wilcox is he's a beast. He's a beast of a kid. He's primarily a wrestler. He has some, striking power, certainly. He only has 2 wins by knockout. The majority of his wins have come by decision. He's a grinder when it comes right down to it. Physically, how these guys match up, Masvidal stands 5'11" to Wilcox's 5'6", so certainly 5 inches of height favoring Gamebred, and also the reach department. Masvidal's going to have a 4.5-inch reach advantage, which I think will help him significantly. Look for Masvidal to use his movement, use his footwork, speed to stay on the outside and pick Wilcox apart. He does have a 79% takedown defense, which is impressive. He was able to defend a lot of takedowns. So that will be put to the test if Wilcox shoots in and looks to put him on his back. But I like Masvidal's foot movement. I like his power. I like his diversity. He uses a lot of strikes. And don't be surprised to see Masvidal shoot on Wilcox. If Justin can get on top with regularity, he could grind out a win here. But I think Masvidal definitely is the more well-rounded fighter, has more ways to win this fight. So I'm going to take Jorge Masvidal to defeat Justin Wilcox. And I'm going to say Masvidal does this one by knockout. All right, our final preliminary fight of the evening, again in the 155-pound division, as Pat Bam Bam Healy, 29-15-0, battles Strikeforce newcomer Mizuto Hirota, 14-4-1. Taking a look at Healy first, this guy is on a significant roll. He's won 7 of his last 8 fights, including 4 in a row. In Strikeforce, he's beat Lyle Beerbaum, Eric Wisely, Maximo Blanco, and Carlos Fodor. Consecutively prior to that, he lost via submission to Josh Thompson in the third round of fight. He was doing very well in Pat Healy, a huge welterweight, huge lightweight dropping down from welterweight. His opponent, Mizuto Hirota, is on a 2-fight winning streak, back-to-back decision wins, both fighting in the Deep organization over in Tokyo, Japan. Overall, Mizuto has won the majority of his fights by knockout with 8, also 6 decision wins. His last loss came at Dynamite 2009, where he was submission via hammerlock against Shinya Aoki. First thing that stands out for me, as I said, Pat Healy is a gigantic lightweight, standing 6 foot tall compared to Hirota's 5'7", and this plays directly into Bam Bam's strength, as Healy is a grinder. He's the type of guy who gets on top of opponents like we saw with Carlos Fodor, and he grinds them out. And I think that's the game plan he should look to use here. One thing with Healy, he's done very well of late. He is far from invincible, though. He has 4 losses by knockout and another 6 by submission. So certainly he is finishable. Overall, in his win total, 6 wins by knockout, big 15 wins by submission. He's an impressive specimen in that sense, as again, he has the ability to show against Carlos Fodor, where he won by arm triangle choke, get on top, grind him out, and eventually submit him. Healy has some issues with stamina. Against Maximo Blanco, he certainly slowed down. But again, his size and grinding style and ability to wrestle his opponents usually makes up for that problem. He's going to need to be careful in the later stages if the fight goes that long. If Hirota is able to get to avoid the early submission, he has 8 wins by knockout. Clearly has power. If Healy slows down and Hirota is able to catch him, he could potentially stop him. But again, I think Healy has the capabilities of winning this fight. As far as I'm concerned, Healy's win over Carlos Fodor should have warranted him a fight. This fight should be on the main card of this event, simply because Healy should get the next title shot against Gilbert Melendez. If they pass him over for anybody else in Strikeforce, or even in the UFC, as far as I'm concerned, if they were to bring somebody over, which they're probably not, it's the Strikeforce is doing a significant injustice to a solid veteran who's put the time in and should be given a title shot against Gilbert Melendez, and at the very least should be on the main card so people can see who could be fighting him next. Either way, my prediction in this fight is Pat Healy to defeat Mizuto Hirota by grinding decision. We now move to the main card for our first of 4 predictions, 3 of which will be taking place in the middleweight division, including this fight, as the Dean of Mean, Keith Jardine, 16-11-2, welcomes Roger Gracie, 4-1, to the 185-pound weight class. Jardine is coming off a loss at Strikeforce 38 to the reigning middleweight champion Luke Rockhold. He was stopped in the first round. Prior to that, he had a draw against Gegard Mousasi, and then a pair of wins outside of any major organization where he had rejuvenated his career. While Roger Gracie at Strikeforce World Grand Prix Barnett versus Haritonov was knocked out by King Mo Lawal at the end of the first round, his first loss of his career. And the first thing with Roger Gracie, we know what this guy's all about. He's a second-degree BJJ black belt, one of the most talented submission artists in all of mixed martial arts, not just Strikeforce, not just North American mixed martial arts, all mixed martial arts. His 4 wins have all come by submission, and he's Trevor Prangley, Kevin Randleman, Ron Waterman, Yuki Kondo, all known fighters. He's been able to submit them all. But King Mo certainly expose something. The question is, what happens when Gracie takes a shot? And Lawal has power. He put a shot on his chin, and he buckled, and Lawal was able to put him away. But we certainly saw King Mo a little bit hesitant in that fight because of what Gracie's capable of if he gets his hands on you. And Gracie at 6'4" is a very tall, lengthy fighter, the type of guy who wraps you up and eventually will put you away. But again, he's fairly skinny to start with, and was fighting at 205. Now he's going to make that 20-pound weight cut down to 185. And at 6'4", that could be a little bit difficult. Something of a concern. And he's 30 years old. It's not like he's old by any stretch of the imagination. But I'll be curious to see how he looks. Keith Jardine, on the other hand, this is his second fight at middleweight. I expect better things from him. He's 36 years old. Certainly winding down his career. The biggest thing with Keith Jardine is his knockout total. He has 8 wins by knockout, which is impressive, but he's been knocked out 6 times, including by the likes of Thiago Silva, Ryan Bader, Luke Rockhold, most recently, Vanderlei Silva, Houston Alexander. His chin is suspect. But one thing, he's a Greg Jackson-trained fighter. He has a pair of wins by submission. He's never been tapped out. He's very hard to submit. He's very hard to get to the ground even. He's never faced a grappler like Roger Gracie before. But still, Jardine, his awkward herky-jerky movement gives people a lot of trouble. And I wonder if that's not going to be an issue for Gracie in this sense. He's going to have to get his hands on Jardine. And Jardine has power. We saw him knock out some fighters. We saw him what he did against Chuck Liddell. He dropped him with a big shot. He stopped Forrest Griffin. That was impressive. The guy is capable of hurting his opponents. And Roger Gracie, if he gets the fight to the ground, he's probably taking this fight by submission. But I'm going to go a different direction here. I think Keith Jardine will be more adjusted to the 185-pound weight class. He will use that movement, force Gracie to chase him, potentially drag that fight into the later rounds. And as Gracie starts to slow down, we'll see Jardine open up a little bit, land with some power. And I'm going to take a fight, an outcome that most people probably will disagree with, and they'll probably voice their opinions. But I'm going to take Keith Jardine to defeat Roger Gracie by TKO. Continuing on in the middleweight division, we go to see the ruthless one, Robbie Lawler, 18-8-0, welcoming another former Strikeforce light heavyweight, dropping down to the 185-pound division as Lorenz the Monsoon Larkin, 12-0, faces off with Lawler. You look at what Lawler's done recently. He's coming off a TKO win over Adlan Amagov, flying kick and punches, very impressive. Prior to that, he had back-to-back losses against Tim Kennedy and a submission loss against Jacare Souza, against the elite of the division. There's no question we know what Robbie Lawler's looking for. 19 career wins, 16 of which by knockout. The guy's heavy-handed and definitely a dangerous striker. Lorenz Larkin, on the other hand, is coming off what was originally a knockout loss against King Mo Lawal, since turned around to be a no contest when Lawal tested positive for a banned substance. Larkin was knocked out. Prior to that, though, undefeated, 8 wins by knockout, 4 wins by decision. He has significant power, and he's a very diverse striker. He uses a lot of kicks, and I think that's a significant thing here. But before I talk about that, of course, Larkin, he's a very well-built guy. He's not the biggest, wasn't the biggest light heavyweight. He only stands 6 foot tall, and he's only going to be an inch taller than Robbie Lawler, and actually Lawler's going to have an inch and a half of reach, so it's not like Lorenz Larkin's going to have a physical advantage in this fight against Robbie Lawler. So I'll see how he fares when he drops down to 185. Again, it could be a tough cut. He's a thick customer either way. I like his striking style. Robbie Lawler has dangerous hands. He's a very good striker. He's a knockout artist, but it's not like we haven't seen him outstruck before. You go back to his matchup against Renato Babalu Sobral, who's not known for his striking. Sobral got the win, and he did a better job. He mixed up his kicks, he pressured Lawler, and didn't allow Robbie to set up. One fight prior to that, Melvin Manhoof decimated Robbie Lawler through the entire first round. Leg kicks, had Lawler limping, was outstriking Lawler and had him in big trouble until Robbie caught him with a dynamite shot and knocked him out, which is what he's fully capable of and what Lorenz Larkin will have to be aware of. As I said, Larkin, a very solid striker. He knocked out Scott Leahy, who is a former K1 participant. He had a very good fight against Gian Vellante, where he lost the opening round based on his inability to defend takedowns. Came back, mixed up his striking, got the victory. I like Lorenz Larkin's use of kicks here. I think that will be the difference. I think he mixes things better than Robbie Lawler. Now, don't be surprised if Lawler doesn't shoot for a takedown. He's probably been training with Matt Hughes and the rest of those guys out there to work on those aspects, to mix, make his fight game a little more diversified. In his last fight, he had some injuries, cleared up some ailments, and felt better, and as a result had a better performance as far as he was concerned. He certainly did. But I think Lorenz Larkin, as long as the weight cut goes well, is going to outwork Robbie Lawler, put pressure on him, a more diverse strike game, use those leg kicks to land more. And I'm going to take Lorenz Larkin to defeat Robbie Lawler by decision. So now we head over to the co-main event of the evening, and we are finally going to crown a new Strikeforce welterweight champion, which there's a lot of solid welterweights in this company, and they need a title belt to start having challengers. I think this is going to help the promotion a ton. We have Nate the Great Marquardt, 34-10-2, battling Tyrone, the Chosen One, Woodley, 10-0. Marquardt has not fought since March 19th, 2011, which in the UFC. He was cut from the UFC after failing, after having some issues. Went over, signed with Bam, and did not get a fight there, so inactivity. This is actually his welterweight debut. He did make the cut to face Rick Story, so he's already made a cut once down to 170 pounds. We'll see how that goes for this fight. He's coming in on a one-fight winning streak where he defeated Dan Miller at UFC 128. Prior to that, he lost at UFC 122 in a title eliminator against Yushin Okami. Tyron Woodley, undefeated 10-0, coming off a split decision win over Jordan Meehan back at the start of the year in January. He has a win over Paul Daly, which is also significant. Tarek Safin, so he's beat some significant welterweights. Looking first at Nate Marquardt, this guy, if the cut goes well, is going to be a very big and powerful middleweight. He's 6'1", he's a well-built guy, and his biggest issue, he had some problems with guys like Yushin Okami while fighting at middleweight, their size and ability, and Chael Sonnen, his ability to control and beat up Nate Marquardt. And that shouldn't be the issue here. Marquardt is a black belt, but he's got so he's very capable of his submission. 15 wins by submission. He also has 8 wins by knockout. He knocked out a very talented fighter in Martin Kampmann. He also stopped Wilson Govea, and we saw what he did to Damian Maia in only 21 seconds. He's got huge, he's fought a ton of big name fighters. Like I said, Anderson Silva, Chael Sonnen, Husamar Paul Harris, Yushin Okami. He's been in there with just about everybody. Martin Kampmann. That's anybody in the middleweight division. So going into welterweight, he won't be concerned. I don't expect him to be nervous making his debut. Tyron Woodley, the guy has 5 wins by submission, 4 wins by decision. He's an NCAA Division I wrestler. We know what he is all about. Takedowns, get on top, grind out. And I've criticized him before. He's not... he needs to work harder to finish his opponents. Against Jordan Meehan, as far as I was concerned, all he did was take him down, sit in his guard, and the referee did an injustice in that fight by not standing it up quicker. Meehan actually was able, despite not being able to defend the takedowns, still got a nod from one of the judges by trying to be a little bit active off his back. Either way, Tyron Woodley is a grappling-based fighter, and he's going to need to take Nate Marquardt down and control him, but when you're doing that, you're taking down a BJJ black belt, and that's going to be difficult. We've seen fighters in the past, like I said, with Chael Sonnen, have success taking Marquardt down, but Woodley's going to, this is at welterweight again, so Woodley's going to have a task ahead of him to take Marquardt down and keep him there. Another thing, 5-round fight. Woodley has had issues with conditioning. We've seen him gas as early as the second round of a 3-round fight. If he expects to go 5 rounds because he's not a finisher, it's going to be very, very difficult for him in this sense. You go all the way back to May 21st, 2010 against Nathan Coy. He had success early, but Coy was able to match Woodley's wrestling to a certain extent, had Woodley fading, and Coy lost a split decision, was very controversial. Paul Daly, who forced Woodley to work very hard for his takedowns, had a lot of success defending them, was winning with striking. If that was a title fight and had to go 2 more rounds, Daly stops Tyron Woodley. I'm very sure of that, the way he was wailing away on him, and Woodley was certainly fading and having trouble. One thing Tyron does not like, he does not like the striking exchanges. He's been working on it, but he just has a tendency to freeze up a little bit. He lets his opponent get off first, which is certainly an issue, and he allows himself to be backed against the cage, and his opponent starts setting up their strikes. And when his movement's limited, it gives his opponent a great opportunity to unload. We've seen what Nate Marquardt's capable of. He has big-time power. He's a pretty decent striker. He has knockout capabilities. Off his back, he's dangerous. On top of an opponent, he's equally as dangerous. And I think he's a multifaceted fighter. And as long as the weight cut goes well and things go okay, he's going to give Tyron Woodley all kinds of problems. And again, it's a 5-round title fight, so Woodley is going to have to have mastered those conditioning issues for the later stages, since he really isn't a finisher. And I do not anticipate him submitting Nate Marquardt and only 1 knockout. I don't see him knocking Nate Marquardt out either. So I think Marquardt is going to have a lot of success in this fight. So my prediction is Nate Marquardt to defeat Tyron Woodley by TKO or knockout, probably in the later stages, and Nate Marquardt will take over from Nick Diaz as the new Strikeforce welterweight champion. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, now we head to the main event of the evening as the reigning Strikeforce middleweight champion Luke Rockhold, 9-1, battles 14-3-0 Tim Kennedy, the challenger, a fantastic challenger, 2 of Strikeforce's best fighters you will see in definitely going to be a fantastic fight to finish this card off with. Luke Rockhold coming up a TKO win over Keith Jardine. That was his first title defense. He already has a title defense in the books, which is fantastic. Prior to that, his upset victory over former champion Jacare Souza, where he won the title. He also has wins stopping Paul Bradley by TKO and Jesse Taylor by submission, so he's certainly a fantastic, has a decent resume coming along, and it continues to improve. Tim Kennedy, on the other hand, riding a 2-fight winning streak, submission win over Melvin Manhoef. Last time we saw him, he had a decision win over Robbie Lawler. Prior to those 2 fights, he lost in a title fight to Jacare Souza. They were battling for the vacant middleweight title that was given up after Jake Shields left the company to go fight with the UFC. Head-to-head experience-wise, Tim Kennedy certainly has the edge. He has far more fights, 17 to Rockhold's 10. And you look at some of the guys Kennedy's faced, like I said, Lawler, Manhoef, Jacare, Trevor Prangley. He's been in there with Nick Thompson. He's fought Jason Miller a couple of times. you can't knock the people that he has fought. He's battled Scott Smith, so Tim Kennedy certainly has an edge in that department. Overall, in their win totals, Rockhold 2 wins by knockout, 6 by sub, 1 by decision. Kennedy 5 wins by knockout, 7 by sub, and a pair by decision. Both fighters been knocked out once, and Kennedy has lost 2 of those fights by decision. Last 5, Rockhold 5-0, Kennedy 4-1. And as last fight, now it's a big thing, last fight, looking at these two guys. Rockhold 6 months ago, he defended his title. Tim Kennedy has been out of action for a year. His last fight since he fought Robbie Lawler was back in July 30th, 2011, so not quite a year, but still, it's a long time to be away. He's a young guy, he keeps himself in good shape, but still being away from the cage for a year, and then fighting in a title fight against Luke Rockhold, a fighter of his caliber, could be an issue. Both guys have been in Strikeforce a long time. Rockhold 8-0 fighting for the promotion, Kennedy 5-1, so certainly well-deserved to be in this spot representing the company. Physically, how these guys match up, Rockhold is the bigger fighter, 6'3" compared to Kennedy's 6 foot, and he's going to have a slight 3-inch reach advantage, which should help him out in the striking exchanges. Now, head-to-head advantages in skill. Striking technique and power, I give the nod to Rockhold in both situations, and we'll talk about that shortly. Now, speed, I give that to the challenger, Tim Kennedy. He's a very fast fighter, and does a nice job of utilizing his speed. We saw that against Robbie Lawler. Now, the wrestling, I call it a tie. I think both guys are very capable. I don't see a distinctive advantage. If there is one, I guess it goes back to that speed. If Kennedy can outwork and out-hustle the champ, he could get some advantageous positions in the scramble, as we saw him do against Jacare Souza. Submissions, again, it's a close one. I'm going to give Rockhold the edge there. He's a brown belt in BJJ. As far as I can tell, Kennedy is unranked in that scenario. Unranked in jiu-jitsu, but maybe somebody could point that out if I am wrong there. And another thing that helps too, Rockhold has judo background, which certainly will help him. And cardio, I give Kennedy the edge. I don't think Luke Rockhold's going to have cardio conditioning issues, but one thing I see, all of his fights but his win over Jacare have finished inside the first round. Kennedy has lots of experience going beyond round 1. They both have only gone a full 5, and they're both against Jacare. They've only done it once each, but they have experience there at least. Now, fight metric stats, big issue here. Luke Rockhold, 3.91 strikes per minute compared to only 2.96 for Kennedy. So over a 5-round fight, if no one finishes either guy and both match, their output totals, their averages, Luke Rockhold should land far more strikes, almost 1 per minute more than Kennedy, which adds up significantly over a 25-minute fight, and that can be a deciding factor. One thing in the UFC, or in the Strikeforce at least, we've never seen Kennedy put on his back. We'll see if that changes against Rockhold. Either way, I'll be very interested to see how the grappling exchanges take place between these two guys. As Kennedy, especially in his last 2 fights, both against Robbie Lawler and Melvin Manhoef, he came out, and that was clearly his goal from the start. Use his speed, quickness, get his opponent down, and use his superior grappling game to get the victory. I don't know if that'll be something he can look for against Luke Rockhold. I'm certain he'll certainly try it out, but we will see how effective that is. I like Luke Rockhold's striking. I think he has a significant edge, and one of it is his kicks. He's a very diverse fighter. He does a nice job using those kicks. He uses through a switch kick. He's really not afraid to throw because he's confident in his ground game. He'll throw kicks. He'll throw a lot of things. We saw what he did against Jacare. And one thing he does well, he finishes rounds strong. Against Souza, at the end of each round, he did a nice job of pushing the pace, using his striking, and it really helps the judge to make a decision who they're going to give that round, especially in a close round. And I think that could be a deciding factor here. If we have a tight round, if Rockhold does the same thing against that he did against Jacare against Kennedy and pours it on late, he could get the nod in the judges' books in a lot of those scenarios. But again, Kennedy, he's a decent striker, but I see a couple of issues. He seems to leave his head a little bit level and open. He stands a little bit upright with his feet directly underneath of him, which can limit his footwork, and he has a tendency to stand right in front of his opponent, and if Rockhold sees this, he's going to unload with low kicks to try and limit his mobility. He's going to unload with the high kicks to look for a knockout, and he's going to mix things up with his combinations. Now, if Kennedy can get the fight to the ground, that's probably the best place he's going to be able to attack. But Jacare Souza, a talented BJJ black belt, had a lot of trouble against Rockhold. He was able to get him there on a couple of occasions, but he didn't get a lot of offense. So Rockhold did a nice job, A, limiting Jacare's top game, and B, getting back up when the fight did go to the ground. Now, one mistake Rockhold seems to make is he is a little bit aggressive, over-aggressive at points. He has a tendency to forget his position and go for things, and as a result, it can hurt him. We saw against Jacare, he rushed in a couple times and got countered. At one point, he was bouncing on one foot and continued to strike, not recognizing that he's vulnerable to being taken down, and Jacare immediately capitalized it, dumped him on his back, and got a dominant position as a result of it. Now, what this fight comes down to, I don't see either fighter finishing the other. I could be wrong. Again, Kennedy most wins by submission, 7. He's only gone a decision 4 times with a 2-2 record. And Rockhold, he's a finisher too. He's only gone a decision 1 time. But I think these guys match up very well, and it's going to be a very close fight. Could be a split decision. But I think Rockhold simply has more in the bag to offer Tim Kennedy, unless Kennedy's grappling and wrestling game. Unless I'm seeing something wrong here and Kennedy has a significant edge with the grappling. He is a Jackson-trained fighter, so he certainly has submission training in his background. That's not something I'm questioning. I just don't see if he has a good enough advantage to take control of this fight with his ground game over Luke Rockhold. I think Rockhold should be able to match him, and I like Rockhold striking. So my prediction is Luke Rockhold to defeat Tim Kennedy in a very close and entertaining fight, and Luke Rockhold's going to do this by decision. So those are my predictions for the upcoming Strikeforce event. I'm sorry that Luke Rockhold, Tim Kennedy prediction went on for quite a long, but I'm very excited about the fight. I think it's going to be fantastic. Kennedy's deserved this shot for a long time, and I think Rockhold would be more than happy to give it to him. This is not the first time these two were supposed to face off against each other, and it's the first time it's actually going to materialize, barring an injury in the week, knock on wood. But what I would say is that this probably won't be the last time we see. If it's a close fight, we could very well see these two fight down the road again, especially if Tim Kennedy walks away with the title. This could be the first of 2, maybe even 3 fights. Don't be surprised if the winner of this gets to face Jacare Souza if he gets by Derek Brunson. Either way, the middleweight division really seems to be shaping up nicely with guys like Roger Gracie and Lorenz Larkin dropping down. In the middleweight division, I think it's going to be very exciting. And either way, Luke Rockhold, if he has the ability to continue winning and to continue succeeding, do not be shocked if we see him in the UFC eventually in a year or two. Again, he's a very young guy. He's only, 27 years of age? I believe, 27. In the UFC in a year or two, battling it with some of the big middleweights they have. So either way, should be a fantastic card. Hopefully I have an improvement upon my UFC 148 night. Hopefully my UFC on Fuel on Wednesday night goes well. Again, buy the bet pack for Strikeforce. You get it along with the UFC on Fuel bet pack. $10 for the 2 of them, so it's a 2-for-1 deal. And if I have a bad night both nights and things just don't go well, I'm going to email you the UFC 149 bet pack password, absolutely free. So it can turn out to be a 3-for-1 deal. Either way, I'm doing my best. Hopefully we can have a good night because I'm right there winning and losing with you each night. So thank you very much to all of my sponsors. Thank you very much to all of my listeners. Head over to kamikazeoverdrive.net. Join the forums, take part, talk, and just do your thing. And I'll see you back here for UFC 149 in a very short period of time. Thank you very much for listening.